Hello and welcome to Florida Basketball Hour. I am Neil Blackman. This is a Merry Christmas edition of the podcast for some SEC power rankings. I realized I hadn't done a power rankings really since the season began, and thought, better late than never, if you will. The guys at Southeast 16, they do an awesome job with these. Max Barr, Blake Lovell. Always want to hear what those dudes have to say as it relates to where they feel like teams are in the SEC. But you guys know Fawcett and I aren't going to miss out on this kind of opportunity, right? So here we are. Let's talk SEC hoops, power rankings. We always start at the top. I know there are some power rankings that start at 16. We do not do that. And I will point out that the SEC remains the top-ranked league in KenPom, even if it is not now the top-ranked league in Torvik, a distinction that belongs to the Big Ten, at least at present. My view is that the SEC had no chance to be considered the best league in America this year if there weren't multiple elite teams at the top like last season. But instead, what we had this year is a really, really dang good league, but there's not that giant like Auburn or a secondary giant like Florida, who was pretty damn good all year too. And so as a result, I think you have 6-7 teams in the SEC. I know what I just did. Trust me, my kids are going to listen to this and tell me, but you're going to have a bunch of teams in the SEC in that 4, 5, 6, 7 seed range. And you're going to have maybe 1 or 2 teams fighting to be a 2 seed, a 3 seed, maybe even a 1 seed. Keeping an eye on our number 1 team as we get to that in a minute. These power rankings are brought to you by our friends at Game Time Sidekicks, who are pleased to sponsor Florida Basketball Hour. If you go over to GameTimeSidekicks.com, you'll get a free Skinny Can koozie with each purchase of $60 or more. You just have to add the Skinny Can to your cart for the discount to apply, but that's a pretty good deal. They've got pretty much a collection. Almost everybody in the SEC, I think, is covered in the Game Time Sidekicks repertoire. Yeah, let's see. We got Alabama, Arkansas, Auburn. I mean, yeah, we're cooking with gas with all 16, including the number 1 team in our power rankings and the defending national champion Florida Gators. So who are not number 1 in our power rankings. But power ranking wise, thanks to Game Time Sidekicks. Check out their stuff. Incredible glassware. It's a lot like your it's a lot like your what do you call it? It's a lot like your Yeti, same concept. I don't know. It works really good. I got a couple of them with the national championship logo on them. I love them. So you will too. Number 1 team in my power rankings this year, at least as we head down to the end of non-conference play, is Vanderbilt. I do not think there is an argument for anyone but Vanderbilt. I think if you do an SEC power rankings right now, and your concern is what has happened on the court, the only number 1 can be Vanderbilt and Mark Byington's team. They are top 15 in both offensive and defensive efficiency. They just dismantled a decent Wake Forest team at Reynolds, which is a tough place. At Joel Coliseum, which is a tough place to win, period. They have the best guards in the conference. Everybody keeps talking about the front line as if it's going to be a problem, but they're scoring pretty much at will. Fawcett did an awesome Twitter expose of like their pick and roll stuff and just why Mark Byington's offense is so good. Tyler Tanner looks like an SEC Player of the Year candidate. I don't think anybody expected that from him, and he looks like he's making a first-team All-SEC star turn. They are the best team in the conference. And they're 6-0 against quad 1 and quad 2. And I understand you could nitpick their schedule and say there's not a quad 1A. That's true. And that like these quad 2 games aren't the best games. Maybe Memphis doesn't end up being quad 2. I think Wake will. But the reality is that they're 12-0. They have the second longest active win streak in America. And we were told they weren't going to be able to rebound, and they're 43rd in defensive rebounding percentage. So an elite basketball team right now, I think, look like a 2 or 3 seed. And for them, I think, just kind of a clear-cut number 1 right now. I don't think you can make a colorable argument that someone else is better. The debate starts at 2. We at Florida Basketball Hour kind of have gone back and forth on it. And I think you could make a reasonable argument for Alabama at 2. I think you could make a reasonable argument for Arkansas at 2. I think you could make an argument for Tennessee at 2. I think you could make an argument for Florida at 2. We ended up just kind of defaulting to Alabama based on who you beat, right? So Alabama has a win over St. John's. They have a win over Illinois. They have a win over Clemson. That's 3 quality wins. I understand the argument that Arkansas might even have better wins, but the Tide have played one of the nation's toughest schedules. They're 4-3 against quad 1 and quad 2. Are there warts on this team? Absolutely. I think that I told you guys at the beginning of the year I did not trust this front court, and I also didn't think they'd shoot the ball as well as a normal Alabama team. Both those things have proven correct. LeBaron Philon is on fire from 3 right now. Is shooting 42%. He looks like a first-team All-American or a second-team All-American. That's the good news, is that him and Holloway, 42%, 43%, are magnificent. The bad news is, they're still trying to find a third guy that's money out there. Houston Millette's been decent at 34%. You put him on Florida, and they're thrilled. But Taylor Boboan has not hit shots lately. Amari Allen has not hit shots consistently enough. Aiden Sherrill, not consistent enough. Latrell Wrightsell in a huge slump. Maybe they'll shoot the ball better and become kind of prolific offensively. I think that's their best sort of long-term hope. But I think in the interim, it's difficult to kind of know what the upside of this team is, if they do start shooting better. Because right now they're second in offensive efficiency, and they're doing an incredible job of getting to the rim and scoring at the rim, and they're just shooting 35% from deep. So offensive ceiling is incredible. Defensive issues are bad. They don't turn people over. They cannot rebound, which I anticipated before the season. Taylor Boboan is not really, a rim protector in the SEC. He's got a 5.9 block percentage, 150th in America, but he's feasting on lower competition, has not been as effective a rim protector against Power 5 opposition, and there's really not a second big that scares you outside of it. Sherrill, he's the one who's skilled. He is the one who gets offensive rebounds. They don't have anyone other than Sherrill who's getting back more than 7.5% of misses, which would be close to the national average on the offensive rebounding percentage. Noah Williamson, the Patriot League Player of the Year, has not been a factor. He's just really not carved out any sort of role. I just can't play fast enough to run the floor the way that Nate Oates wants him. I've got them at number 2 for now, but it's precarious. At number 3, I have the Florida Gators. I do think the Gators are starting to turn the corner this season, and they're an interesting one because they just have the one quad 1 win, but the metrics still really like them. They're 11th in KenPom. They aren't as high in Torvik, which has a little bit of a less of a baked-in preseason algorithm from last year. 32nd in offensive efficiency, but that is improving for the Gators. They get to the free throw line at a pretty high rate. They obviously can dominate the offensive glass, and the reality is they've lost to 3 of the top 7 KenPom teams in America by a total of 11 points. The loss to TCU isn't great. And I think if Todd Golden could have 2 games back, he would have the last 20 seconds of Duke back and the TCU game back. And maybe the Gators are 9-3 or 10-2. And the narrative is a little bit different. But I think this is one of the best defensive teams in America. The numbers bear that out. Top 10 in defensive efficiency, top 25 in field goal percentage defense. They also defensive rebound at an elite level, 11th. They offensive rebound at a prolific rate, and they're starting to shoot the ball a little better. They were 26.32 games ago. They're up to 28%. They're sort of a couple games in a row where they've shot over 30%. I know that that's not, where you kind of wanted them to be. And I even went on Southeastern 16 show and said they need to be 33-34 to go back to the Final Four. I still think that's the case, but I like Florida a lot based on what we've seen the last 5 games, including the losses to Duke and UConn, who are teams that almost no one is going to beat this season. Texas Tech comeback aside, the Gators are our 3rd team in the power rankings, and Xavion Lee has been really good. Boogie Fland has played good defense. He's still not shooting the ball at a level that I think Florida needs from him. 23% is not something that's going to happen all year. 25% from Xavion Lee, not going to happen all year. Xavion's actually shooting 37% in his last 5. So I think Florida will get better shooting as the season goes along. One little asterisk on the Gators. Todd Golden's 0-3 in SEC openers. That opener in Como really, I think, will be a big moment for the Gators in their season as they try to get a quad 1 win to open SEC play, and kind of get off on the right foot for a team that I think many still think, including like the poly market betting markets, think is going to win the SEC. At 4, it's tricky. I have Arkansas at 4. We kind of went back and forth on Arkansas and Tennessee, and Florida basketball, our power rankings have gone with the Hogs. They're 9-3. I know that the Houston game was weird because they didn't guard, and also they couldn't pass for a half. I mean, everything one pass away was taken away, and it was Darius Acuff Jr. kind of dribbling into the cement. He's been spectacular. He's been pretty much as advertised, shooting 44% from beyond the arc, offensive rating at 124, super high usage, but a great assist rate too at 33.8. He's been awesome, man. I think Malik Ewan has had his moments in that front court. I love the game he played against Houston where he had 20 points, obviously missed some big free throws, but to get to the line 17 times against Houston is phenomenal. And he's done it consistently, right? He had 8 free throw attempts against Louisville in that big win. They also beat Texas Tech. They got run out of the building in the second half by Duke, and then lost a close one to Michigan State. They played a tough schedule, not quite at the level of like a Florida, because, the thing that they've had is they've had some true neutral site games. And really the one time they went on the road was Michigan State. Florida's played road and semi-away games. That kind of gave them the edge to me a little bit. But anyway, I still don't totally trust this front court. I'd like Trevon Brazile to just be more active and play the way his athleticism suggests he can play all the time. He can turn it on defensively, but then he has these moments in games where he disappears for large swaths. I love what I've seen from Carter Knox. I think pure talent-wise, they might be more talented than anyone in the SEC, including Florida. They're certainly right there with Florida. They certainly have more talent, I think, than Alabama, more talent than Vanderbilt. Almost a virtual tie with Florida at 3rd, but I have Arkansas at 4th, and then I have Tennessee rounding out the top 5 at 5th. The 3-game stretch, Kansas, Syracuse, Illinois, those losses are all concerning because while I think Illinois is good, I got them in kind of that tier below the best teams in the country. Kansas, same thing. You lose to Kansas 81-76 when they don't have Darren Peterson. That was kind of interesting to me. But, I do think that they went out and got elite Jacoby Gillespie, 23 points, 5 assists, 3 rebounds, and then Nate Ament kind of filling up the stat sheet, 13, 7, a couple of trips to the free throw line. Like, you get a 3 assists, you get that Nate Ament who's happy being a complimentary player. And I think that bodes well for the Vols as they continue to move into league play. But yet after the big win over Houston, which was really the first time they were tested, they dropped 3 games, but they have 2 really nice wins. Houston, one of the best wins in the country, period, end of story. It's going to be a quad 1A all year. Louisville, one of the ACC preseason favorites. When you get marquee home games in the non-conference, you need to win them. And the Vols did that, and they are 5th in our power rankings. At 6, we, a little less debate. And, I shouldn't say a little less debate. I'm sure Georgia fans will be up in arms about this, but I actually have Kentucky. And because they just look different with Jaden Quaintance, man. Like, they were defending at a good level anyway. And I think that was lost in this inability to score narrative, was the reality that other than Louisville, like, they've been pretty good defensively all year, like the North Carolina game, the Tar Heels couldn't score. I guess the Gonzaga game was also an outlier, but Indiana couldn't score, suffocated them. St. John suffocated them. So a team with a couple of quad 1 wins, right? And certainly, I guess they have 1 quad 1 win and 1 quad 2 win right now. But I think with Jaden Quaintance in the mix, you now kind of have to think that at this point, Kentucky is better than some people think, and I'm not giving up on a team that has Denzel Aberdeen, a consummate winner at guard, that has Otega Owe, preseason SEC Player of the Year on the wing, and that has a difference maker as a rim protector in Otega Owe. Also want to give a shout out to our 7th team, the University of Georgia, kind of defying expectations. Have they played Cupcake City? Sure. But Mike White getting back to those Louisiana Tech roots where playing fast was in his DNA, as Mike used to say. And Florida fans kind of shaking their heads. Like, we get it. Mike had teams in Florida that were in the 300s in tempo. Getting back to the Louisiana Tech roots where they were top 50 in tempo all the time. They're 5th in tempo. They have scored 100 points on 5 occasions. That leads the country. They've scored 90 or more on 7 occasions. That's 2nd in the country. They're 19th in offensive efficiency. And they're doing that despite not shooting the ball well. They're only 31% from 3. That's 15th in the SEC. So, the fact that they haven't even shot it particularly well yet, it does impress me. What they lack is a good win, right? Xavier's a nice win. Cincinnati is a nice win, but Georgia is going to enter league play 0-1 versus quadrant 1 and quadrant 2. And that, I think has to be eye-opening. Like, for me, to justify putting Georgia in the top 6, they've got to go and beat somebody that is good. And that could be Auburn in the home opener, right? That's a team that I think Georgia can beat. But they have to go and do it. So I like Mike White's team. I thought they were going to be a bubble-ish NCAA tournament type team if they guarded the way that they did last year. They've come close to that. I did not anticipate. Mike White said he had a really good passing team at SEC Media Days, and they have been exactly that. I think that's what makes them so hard to guard, is that they move the ball beautifully. They're 50% assist on field goals made. That's pretty high for a Mike White team. And they aren't turning the ball over, right? They're 19th in non-steal turnover percentage offensively, which means they've really limited the turnover bug that killed them the last 2 years, and a lot of times in big games. So taking care of the ball, guarding pretty well, rebounding really well on the offensive end, 26th in the country and getting their misses back. I don't know if they will ever shoot the ball better. Mike White was a little worried about that in the preseason, but it's a team that can absolutely go to the NCAA tournament. And I think we all have the NCAA tournament on our minds, especially as league play approaches. And so we want to give you a chance to win with our sponsor, MyBookie, mybookie.ag. If you go directly to either our Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to us, we will have a special MyBookie sign up for Florida Basketball Hour listeners. And if you use the code NEIL500, NEIL 500, you'll get a welcome bonus at MyBookie. The bonus is called the Bet Back Bonus, and it works like this. Once you claim the bonus, opt in on your bet slip, and that opting in is a form of insurance where if you don't win on your first bet, you'll get your money back, up to $500, subject to a one-time rollover. If you listen to Florida Basketball Hour enough, you know that you're going to get tips and hints to help your bet succeed. So thank you to our friends at mybookie.ag. And as we move on with our SEC power rankings, we go to that 8th spot. And our 8th team in the power rankings right now is going to be Auburn. There's a lot to like about this team on the offensive end, right? They have a really nice win at home over NC State. That's probably going to stay quad one. They have a win over St. John's that should almost certainly be quad one and neutral. That'll never get out of quad one, actually. Oregon is going to be right there. They've challenged themselves. Now, they've gotten blown out some too. So, I think the question with Auburn is like, how much do you weigh the games where they've gotten smoked versus when they've looked good? When you're 2-4 against quadrants 1 and 2, how do you evaluate that? In the Oregon game right now, a quad 3 game coming on a neutral floor because Oregon's disappointed a little bit. I still think that Oregon game gets back to a quad 2. Dana Altman's teams always figure it out. And by the way, Oregon's played a brutal schedule. But for me, the two bugaboos with Auburn is that Stephen Pearl's a defensive dude, and they just aren't guarding, man. 84th in defensive efficiency, and that's with the baked-in algorithm, so they're probably a little worse than that. And in fact, when you go over to Torvik, you see pretty quickly, you look at the defensive algorithm in Torvik again, and this is just with a tiny little bit of difference, and you got 126th in defensive efficiency. That is not gonna cut it, man. They're gonna have to guard better, and I know there's no shame in giving up 97 to Arizona, who's awesome. There's no shame in giving up 88 to Purdue, but they've had these nip and tuck tight games with teams like Chattanooga and Bethune-Cookman. And really the result of that is that they can't stop anybody. Now, the flip side is that in Keyshawn Hall and Taha Pettiford, they have 2 bona fide SEC Player of the Year candidates. And I don't know how many other teams in the league have that, right? Maybe Florida, maybe Tommy Houck and what do you think, Alex Condon? He sure has been good lately, but I mean, I think Keyshawn Hall and Todd Pettiford probably even more so. And so, I think the ceiling for Auburn is there. It's there. It's a matter of what happens with the rest of that league. As they get into league play, can they guard the rest of the league is what I'm trying to point out. I don't know. I think, Stephen Pearl doesn't know because they haven't consistently defended anyone. All right. 9th, and doing this without Fawcett on my own is tricky because, you have to stop talking every now and then. All right. 9th in our power rankings. We spend a little less time on every team as we go through here. LSU is our 9. They're 10-1. Another team that if you look at the net, I don't think they're 34th, and they have one quadrant one win. So, I think you kind of look at that and say, hey, how long does that SMU win stay quadrant one? I don't know. That's hard to say, but they, have mostly feasted on cupcakes. The Texas Tech loss, their one real quad 1A opportunity, they got lit up. They haven't played a true away game except against Boston College, who is terrible, and they required overtime for that. I actually would have LSU higher if Jalen Reed had not been hurt and lost for the season. Just really terrible. Like I hate that happened for him. What a wonderful young man, was a top 50 recruit, would start of the season great, deserves the opportunity to be healthy. You'll remember I was higher on this team in the preseason than most. I put LSU at 11th in our preseason rankings, which doesn't seem super high, but when they were picked 15th, it is. Sorry about that. So I like LSU. I would like them a lot more with Jalen Reed. I do think there's a high opportunity that they enter league play 12-1, and with the game against A&M to start league play, maybe get to 13-1. We'll see. The Aggies have been a little bit better of late, but also, you talk about teams that have beaten no one. Buckyball. Whenever they played a team with a pulse, they've gotten lit up. So we'll see what happens. LSU certainly has a pulse. They just don't have their best player right now, which is unfortunate. Still have them 9th because the power rankings are based on what you've done now and how you're continuing to play. It's a little bit of everything. And so I think 9th is fair for them. At 10th, I've got Mizzou. Big one tonight against Illinois. Obviously, if they can get that game on the neutral floor in St. Louis, then maybe they go higher. They're very, very good offensively, is what I'll say about Missouri. You talk about teams that aren't guarding great, and they're one. And I think Mark Mitchell can play better than he's played, especially shooting. He's only shooting 20% from three. He's a better career three-point shooter than that, but he's drawing fouls at a pretty prolific rate, 7 a game, getting to the free throw line at a prolific rate, top 50 in the country. Ant Robinson continues to just be one of the best defenders in America. And, Jaden Stone is banging in shots from beyond the arc off the bench. Luke Northweather is banging in shots coming in off the bench. They're 7th in effective field goal percentage, shooting 37% from the team from beyond the as a team from beyond the arc, getting a ton of their misses, almost 40% of their misses. This is a really dang good offensive basketball team. On the flip side, they haven't guarded well at all. We saw that in the Kansas game when they gave up 1.2 per possession to the Jayhawks without Darren Peterson, another SEC team that couldn't beat them with Darren Peterson sitting. They again, like Notre Dame, 1.15 points per possession loss. That's their one trip on the road. Other than that game, Dennis Gates scheduled against Howard to open the year. The Illinois game is going to show me a lot, but I'm buying kind of the potential of Missouri, and I've got them at 10 for the time being. At 11, we have the Longhorns, another team that has challenged themselves. Credit to Sean Miller. They're kind of a mix of like his Xavier teams, like they were happy to get up and down. His old Arizona teams were more plodding and methodical. They're right in the middle from a tempo standpoint. They're better than I thought they'd be offensively. Top 100 effective field goal percentage, top 60 in taking care of the ball, top 30 in getting back their misses. I knew they'd rebound. I'm impressed that they're with their makes. They don't shoot the ball well. They're 14th in the SEC in three-point percentage. We kind of knew that would probably be a problem, even with Jordan Pope and Tremont Mark. Simeon Wilcher is a guy they've got to run more stuff for. 38 threes. He should have 50 at this point. I think if you talk to Sean Miller, he would agree with that. But they played tight game. Like UConn, 71-63, they were in that game throughout. Duke, 75-60, they were in that game for a half. Arizona State, they lose by 1 on a neutral out in Maui. Back and forth, could have gone either way. They have a great win over NC State. That's going to age like a fine wine as NC State continues to improve under Will Wade in year 1. But at 8-4, they've got them at 11th, largely because I still don't trust the shot making against good teams, and I think you've got to make shots, or have a dominant front court to win big time games against elite teams. They've made shots in the NC State game and they won, but every other big test they've kind of faded in the second half, and to me that fade warrants an 11th spot just behind Mizzou. I have A&M at 12th. This is almost more feel than anything else. They did rout Florida State, which was surprising to me on the neutral floor down in Tampa. Really kind of almost semi away for them. They won their SEC Challenge game against Pitt. Not a great Pitt team, but got it done anyway. Had an up and down rock fight, in Dallas with SMU. Again, kind of a semi-away format, but losing overtime to SMU, that would have been their only quad 1 win. That lopsided loss to Oklahoma State will not age well. But they've been fun. They're 22nd in tempo, shooting at 38.4% from deep. So in that respect, Bucky McMillan got exactly what he hoped for out of his roster. Their front court is going to be debilitating. I think when they get to league play, if there's a team in the SEC that has kind of deceptive rebounding numbers right now, it's A&M. They're not going to be 54th in offensive rebounding percentage this season. They're not going to be 95th in defensive rebounding percentage. And in fact, like you look at, yes, they out rebounded SMU 42-37, and that was impressive. But like you look at that loss to Oklahoma State where they got out rebounded, they gave up 13 offensive boards. Like those types of things I think are going to be problematic for them when league play starts. We'll find out. Perhaps I'm too low on them based on a lack of big time results. I don't know. I think it's a fair spot to have them. So they're at 12th for me. At 13th, we have Oklahoma, another team that has disappointed. They got a rout of Wake Forest, another team that won big at Joel Coliseum. They did beat Marquette, who ended up being terrible. They're a team that scheduled okay, and it turned out like that just the teams that Porter Moser was hoping would turn into quad 2 and quad 1 opportunities have turned out to be bad. But that Oklahoma State win, I think, will age pretty well. Chance to stay quad 1, semi away in Oklahoma City, get that win last Saturday was a big deal. No real eye-glaring bad losses either. Like Arizona State, isn't awesome, but Bobby Hurley's team has been better than people thought they would be. Gonzaga, no shame in losing to them. Nebraska, obviously 12-0 to start the year, despite that sloppy first half against North Dakota yesterday. So Porter Moser's team 13th. Not much to talk about there. The bottom 3 shouldn't surprise anybody. I got South Carolina at 14. Maybe I'm too high on South Carolina considering they have absolutely no wins in quadrant 1 or quadrant 2, but I think they've been competitive. Butler lost by 7, Northwestern lost by 2, Clemson lost by 7, Virginia Tech lost by 5. They guard. I think that they get on the defensive glass. They don't turn the ball over. I just trust them a little more than the last 2 teams, which are the state of Mississippi. I have Miss State at 15. I don't think I have Miss State last, and I have Ole Miss 15. I wrote that down wrong. I have Ole Miss at 15. Ole Miss, man, it's been tough. Like they challenged themselves, like you'd expect a team that just went to the Sweet 16 to do. I told you guys before the year I didn't like this roster build. I love Malik Dia, but I thought everything they did around Malik Dia made almost no sense. And it's turned out that way. AJ Storr had gotten off to he got off to a really good start, okay, and has been good at times. Obviously, the great game against Southern Miss, KenPom MVP there, KenPom MVP against Sela. He's also had just games where he's been a total zero. The Miami game, where he's 2-9 from the floor with 3 turnovers. Yesterday against NC State, 0 for 5 from the field, 1 point with 2 turnovers. They've got to get more at AJ Storr. They're hopeless, but I got them at 15. I just don't think they're as hopeless as cross-state rival Miss State, Chris Jan's team. They can't score. They are ranked 13th in the SEC in three-point range. They need to be better. Once again, it's kind of Josh Hubbard or bust. The Jaden Epps thing has not worked the way they hope yet. And even when Jaden Epps has played well, which he has on occasion, they're getting very little outside of anyone else other than Jabari McGee, who has shown that he can help them shoot. Their front court has just not been good enough, to be frank. I mean, Brendan Walker probably should play more because, I don't think they're getting what they need out of Acor, which was like the big time acquisition that they made. And then Quincy Ballard has not made, he's been fine as a defensive rebounder, but he's offered zero to their offense. And you need guys that can help force paint help when you have Josh Hubbard and Jaden Epps, and they don't have that. And then, they're defensively, Chris Jan's teams tend to be disruptive, and they're not. Like, they're 351st in defensive turnover percentage. That ain't going to cut it. Like, the dentist is supposed to be hard to play against. This team is not. So they are last in our SEC power rankings. Merry Christmas to everybody. Thank you all for listening. And, hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll be back with power rankings every week during SEC play.